If you're into video games or into the monster capture genre, then you've probably heard of Palworld.
Look at you. Look at you. Now you gotta work for me. Come on, get it. Come here. Come here. What in the hell is that?
While this might seem like a very odd video for this channel, it falls within the realms of entertainment, and there is a point to be made here. You're showcasing the success of this game and comparing it to the recent decline in popularity of productions put out by large organizations like Nintendo. We've seen this happen in entertainment where indie movies usually are creating better quality movies, stories, and plots than mainstream media. And Palworld is a very good example of what happens when passion is once again placed into the art. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make money, but if the passion is completely void within the art form, then people are going to feel that and not going to be interested in your product. There's been many discussions I've had on this channel of movies and TV shows and entertainment in general that has just been on the decline and downtrend because studios have now gotten so big, a lot of them are monopolies, and they no longer feel as though they have to put their best foot forward in creating good stories or presentations that people will love. Everything is about the way the characters look, what ethnicity they are, what their background is, whether or not they're female or male, and less about who they are as characters and people. The world building has fallen apart, and I've heard from so many people and have observed myself how they will present us with a world of fantasy that is intended to function as an escapism, only for it to fall apart before our very eyes. And then we are gaslit and told that it doesn't need to make sense. Then the slog that these mainstream companies are putting out are the status quo, and we need to just grin and bear it. And then you have situations like that of Palworld. Palworld is on everyone's lips, especially those like me who are fans of the Monster Capture franchise. As you can see, especially those who've been following me on Twitter, I have been playing it non-stop, and I can't remember the last time I've been this addicted to a Monster Capture game or a survival game, and I love both. Every monster game you can think of, I've probably played it. And I find that the indie developers or people who are not mainstream usually put out a much better product than that of Nintendo. For some short backstory, I love Pokemon. I used to seek out the old retro games and consoles to play them. I bought systems like the old Game Boys that look like calculators or the SP and the DS. I have purchased and owned every single Nintendo console with the exception of the Wii and the Wii U and have played Pokemon games for each and every single one of them. I played with the toys, and although I didn't finish it, I also watched a lot of the show. The only thing I can say that I've never actively taken part in is Pokemon card trading. While I have owned Pokemon cards, it wasn't a hobby to go around playing with cards because I wanted the real deal. I didn't want paper. I wanted to watch my monsters fight. I became a big fan of genres like Monster Rancher. I've owned every single Monster Rancher and bought the system for those that I didn't have, and I was floored. Actually, someone introduced me to that, and it was perfect. And then something happened. Pokemon became so successful. It wasn't the first. The origins of the genre came from games like Megami Tensei and Dragon Quest. So Pokemon took inspiration very liberally from things like Dragon Quest, and so they weren't the first, but they got the biggest bloom in popularity. It's kind of like Minecraft. You take an idea, inspiration from an original idea or someone else's idea, and then you execute it better and make it popular.
Up on stage, Notch just accepted his second award of the evening, the grand prize for his work on Minecraft, a game that was already breaking all sorts of records. Now imagine, as you stand there right at the back, that not too long ago you created a game as well. The game credited as being the inspiration for Minecraft's now iconic blocky design.
It's just like it's just awful. And so like it was just years and years and years of this, of feeling bad.
And since then, every other Monster Capture game has been doing exactly what Pokemon already did. But Pokemon remained on top because they were putting out quality over quantity. That's why it took a while. Nintendo always prided themselves on that. The Pokemon company always prided themselves on that. But it's very easy to become complacent when you've been at the top for so long. People will just eat what you give them because there's nothing else available. There is no competition. And competition breeds creativity. I mean, it's the whole reason for why we even have things in space. Because someone decided to do it to be more powerful than the other person, and the other person wanted to beat them. Competition is what drives us as intellectual beings. We need it in order to be creatively successful. And because people like myself who love Pokemon, love Monster Capture games, have become void and tired and bored of the same old, spending $60+ of money that we don't really have to buy a game basically feels unfinished and unpolished, especially in comparison to recent releases or in times gone by, the quality of the games we used to purchase. And so when a new challenger approaches and it actually has that quality, of course we're going to jump at it. And that is what happened with Palworld. This is a wonderful thing, because in the realms of art, if you do not have competition, you will never get anything better than what you have now. Everything will always stay the same. When you have a monopoly or a dictator, everything around that thing dies because you become complacent. You have so much influence that you don't need to change anything about yourself or become better. Why would you? There's no push to become better because there's no reason to. You're the best. You're the only choice. Why would you push to work harder to better yourself if people are going to choose you and bow down at your feet all the time anyway? You can look the fans in their eyes and tell them that they're evil for not buying your product or for criticizing it because you know they have nowhere else to go. It's why all the biggest social media platforms and biggest movie studios laugh in the face of the audience until the money starts to run out. Now, even though the money will be impacted first, these studios will still be brave enough to vilify their audiences and consumers, which is crazy to me because they know or think that they have nowhere else to go. But now we're starting to see a change, and Japan is killing it in this game because not only are they putting out amazing games, but they're also putting out amazing entertainment in general, especially in the movie and anime sector. People are starting to leave, especially Western people, Western media and entertainment and productions to get their fill elsewhere, not just from Japan, but from other countries as well. You see, Palworld set a precedent for rising above the proverbial monster at the summit of the tower. It's easy for people to sit back and say, it's too imposing, it's abominable, no one can ever go up against it, and to bitch and moan and complain about it. But when someone starts from the ground up and creates something after failing many times, finally succeeds at creating and giving the fans something that they want, filling the niche that they know needs to be filled, that everyone else is too afraid to step forward and build upon. When that happens, you see the result. You see the thirst that people have. You see how they rampantly and voraciously tear down the floodgates to get a piece of something that has passion and substance and quality. And a lot of people will get upset and shill for these major companies. And I'm telling you right now, that is one of the reasons why these companies continue to be complacent, because they have successfully cultivated drones. People who behave like products. People who are complacent with just the name of a franchise. And they will bend over backwards to attack everyone else who was just holding this large billion-dollar company to a certain standard that it always held in the past, not realizing that by doing that, they are essentially killing the franchise in the long run. By them gatekeeping or bending over backwards to present their rear end to these companies so these companies can shove a stake through there and puppeteer them, they are actually in the long run killing the very franchises they claim to champion for, because people will get tired. Not only are the companies vilifying the audiences who are saying, we want quality, we want these franchises to continue, but the drones that they are puppeteering, like the horsehair parasite that completely devours the inside of an insect and uses it as a mech, are vilifying the very people who are also fans of those franchises, who are saying, we don't want these franchises to die, we want them to be better, we want them to last a long time, and in order to do that, you have to maintain the level of quality that you've had in the past. And that kills creativity. But people don't learn, because the more people come out about something that is successful, that is shown to be the solution to what a lot of people are wanting and looking for, is the more successful that thing ends up being. We've seen what happened with the Harry Potter game. People bitching and moaning and complaining about it, despite its success, made it even more successful than it already was. And the same thing is happening to Palworld. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why people will see something that is successful that clearly 80 to 90% of consumers want and fight against that.
Look at this redwood mother. What half?
No. Prefers Agnet.
No one prefers Agnes.
It's just so odd to me. Now, I'm by no means saying that everybody has to like it or enjoy it or feel the same way about it, but it's the vile hatred and inimicalness that really gets me. They take it so personally for some strange reason against actual individuals that want to support the success of something that clearly a lot of us audience members or consumers or gamers want. And I bring up Palworld because it is doing the same thing that these monopolies or very big studios have done. The exact same thing. But because Nintendo and other studios like it that are large form and at the summit of their thrones and have been there for a long time, because they have been the prevailing giants, everybody is blinded and has short-term memory and won't even click to see the history of how these companies formed their companies in the first place, having done exactly the same thing that productions like Palworld has done. People will talk about AI, which to me doesn't make any sense, because even if they're using it, so what? If you use the AI as a tool and you build upon it and you make something of substance, what is the issue? Every form of media that we've had, AI or technology, has always advanced towards making better products. We've seen how it's developed with TV and movies over the years. They make better cameras, they make digital cameras, they have tech that can clean up audio much easier than they had to do it in the past when they had those tape things with the plastic inside of them that would wear out after a while. And of course, unfortunately, every time you bump up in advancement in technology, people are going to lose their jobs, because where things were more hands-on, now they facilitated ways to make production last a shorter time, but also facilitate it for the people working on these movies so we can get more of those. And as a result, as things become more automated, as things become easier, you don't need as many people working on it, or it frees up spaces and jobs for other things. And that's basically what AI has done. I'm not saying that the game used it, but even if it did, so what? If movies used AI and it actually made great stories, and that freed them up to then work on other things, like the world building or the CGI that has become piss poor in recent years, what would be the problem? So long as you are making something of substance. The thing that people forget is that everything is inspired by something else. There's a difference between inspiration and plagiarism. Here is the contrast of the definitions. An important distinction between inspiration and plagiarism is that an inspired writer adds something original to their work, even if it draws on ideas from an existing work. A plagiarist, on the other hand, merely copies someone else's work. And many movies and TV shows have done this. You've seen a dime a dozen horror movies with spiritual monsters in a house where a family died before, and everybody has done that idea to death. But every now and then you get things like Sinister or Amityville Horror that builds on that or has their own thing. It's the same concept with a different execution. You can't say they plagiarized the idea because they added something new to it. It was their own presentation, their take on it. In the realms of art, when we are inspired by something, we take an idea or concept and make it our own. We build on it, adding our own unique perspective and creativity to create something new and original. In contrast, when we simply copy something, we replicate it without any original thought or innovation, as said by the 1605 Collective. And see, it's important to make that distinction. But then what happens when everybody starts coming out the woodworks and doing exactly the same thing? After a while, the ideas start to meld together and people get bored. And you can tell people get bored because they'll be vocal about it, or they'll show that they're bored by not spending money on it. And that's what happens with the big movie studios. They get complacent, they do the same thing over and over again, they have a formula, and they say the formula works, but now if you're only producing things based on that formula, it becomes too formulaic. Do you understand? There's no innovation, there's no one that you're competing against or you need to compete against, so you still stick with the formula. It's like being married or in a relationship with someone where you are intimate with them, and after the first few times, it's great, it's wonderful, but if you know we're gonna do it every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock missionary style every single time, it will still feel good, but people are going to get bored. And if they see someone else doing something where they're hanging from the chandeliers or doing a different position, you're going to start to want other things. Humans require variety. Humans are built on creativity, innovation. And if things are no longer being innovated, people will get bored and look and search out places where they can get their fix on novelty. It is how humans are built. And there's nothing wrong with that. So instances like Palworld have basically built upon that. As a Pokemon fan, as a Monster Capture fan, I remember years ago, I wanted to make a video game. I was actually aspiring to be a video game developer. I didn't have the time because I was working and doing other stuff, and then I had to learn coding, which is a huge undertaking. So I respect my husband for that because he's a programmer, and I see him combing through lines of code to make the stuff that he makes, and he's very good at it. And I honestly can say I cannot do what he does. First of all, he has the mind for it, and I appreciate that. A lot of hard work goes into that. But I remember feeling that void, wanting a monster capture game. Something like Monster Rancher felt real. Something where it wasn't just turn-based. You could watch your monsters fight, give them orders, fight alongside them, breed them, ride them, traverse worlds, meet other people, have your monsters have personalities. Monster Rancher came closest to that, but it missed the whole free roam aspect. And I wanted to take all the wonderful monster capture games and combine them. The closest thing that I had to that was a game I played when I was younger called Outernauts. You know, when Facebook had games on it and they were actually good. And this was Pokemon in space. And I was floored. They clearly took inspiration from some Pokemon designs as well. Nobody said anything about those. I spent so much money on that game, and that game was fulfilling. It had a huge community. I was part of a guild, and it was perfect. Everything that Outer Knots accomplished was exactly what I wanted in a Pokemon game. It got very huge, but I'm so sorry. If people are out there looking for it now, you can look at old videos of it. It was wonderful. You could breed the monsters. You couldn't ride them, but you could breed them. You could fight other people in the world. You could meet other people in the world. It was so fulfilling, and it had story and progression that was just a perfect pacing, and then it got canceled. Ever since I've experienced that, I've been looking for something else to fill that void, and nothing has come close. As much as I love Pokemon, Temtem, Monster Crown, all of those, nothing has come close until Palworld. And where there is a need to be filled, someone will fill it. Anime fills that for me when it comes to story and character development, because I realize more and more Western media does not have it, and that's unfortunate. And instead of vilifying the fans, you have to understand why they're doing this. People are going to spend their money on what they want and what they like. It's easy to hijack people if you can just give them what they want and keep them docile. But if they're leaving in droves, or if they're bickering about what you're putting out, most of the time people aren't doing it just to be hateful. People are doing it because there literally is a need. There is something wrong. Something needs to be approved upon. And when studios and companies and industries become too complacent, especially when they're the only ones out there, when there is no competition, they stagnate. And as a result, we stagnate. The whole reason why this developer of Palworld was able to make this is because he saw there was a need for this. He took inspiration from two different genres and combined them. His entrepreneurial genius is just crazy. And him being vilified for giving people what they wanted all along, that these companies did not want to do because they're too selfish and greedy. Him capitalizing on the very thing that Nintendo itself did and being vilified for it is what is crazy for me. People have gotten so weird that they will see you liking something that is successful, that is good for a franchise, that will only bloom in art and creativity and make you feel as though you are somehow the monster. It is a good thing. It's a very good thing, and I bring up Palworld because I've seen the success of it. I've already commented this on another video, but I feel like the whole way this started, even with the developer's journey and origin, should be its own movie, because I would love to see that story. Just from what I've heard, it's crazy. Better than Silicon Valley. So competition is good for creativity. And shows like Invincible, The Boys, that are becoming competitors of the MCU and the DC universe, notice that I would much more rather watch the Amazon Prime Invincible and The Boys than watch anything that the MCU is putting out. I want the MCU to do well. I didn't know about comic book characters. I used to read graphic novels, but not really comic book characters. I know of them, but I didn't know about their stories. And the fact that they were coming to the big screen where I could experience the stories visually in that way, that made me interested in characters like Deadpool, who I didn't even know existed, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And it made me look into all these other superheroes that I had no idea existed. I thought Batman, Superman, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Ninja Turtles, I thought that was it. I didn't know there was a cornucopia of superheroes and a backlog of characters that still have yet for their stories to be portrayed on screen. And not all of them have to be female or look a certain way. There's just so many of them. And to see these companies are not taking advantage of this is frustrating, because now everything is about a formula and pissing off the fans and seeing what the fans want and doing the complete opposite of it. And it just floors me. I hope that, and I expect that, moving forward, Palworld will set the precedent once again for other people to come out and try to make more of this type and inspire more people. They've seen the success of it, 8 million copies in what, 5-6 days? That is crazy. And I remember when this game was announced, I think it was 21, I can't remember, but I remember the first time it was announced, and then we got this little cinematic trailer for it, and I said to myself, if they can accomplish this, it's very ambitious, but if they can accomplish this, this is exactly what I want, and I know it's gonna be a hit. I remember thinking that. I wrote it down, and I knew it was going to be a hit because it's what I, as a Monster Capture fan, wanted and I would love. And it's going to set the precedent for so many other people being inspired and jumping on this, which it should. And that's what should happen with movies too, and TV shows. When you see a TV show that's successful, but there seems to be a disconnect in Western culture where they'll see something successful and decide that they're going to either ruin it or not do the thing that would make them successful, that made them successful in the past. And it's this very odd form of self-sabotage that I still cannot wrap my head around. But hopefully things get better. Hopefully people will see this and not be deterred to take inspiration and to rise above the monopolies and continue to push art forms and works of art that challenge the status quo, that push quality and passion once again, because that's what art's about. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.